Hi, this is Sheridan from Virginia. I just published my website, Tip Top Copy. Enjoy the show.
Yay, that's awesome. Congratulations, Sheridan.
Yeah, that's a huge
deal.
Put it on a coaching call if you haven't already.
Yes,
I'm not sure when this podcast is going to air,
absolutely.
But
send in for the coaching call.
See it.
That's awesome. Yeah. Okay, so hey there, everybody. Welcome back to another episode of the Build Your Copywriting Business podcast. Hey there, Kate.
Hello.
Today we are digging into something I find very exciting and something that scares the living daylights out of Kate. We are going to dig into some real revenue numbers from Kate, who up until last year, for several years, was a full-time freelancer, or not up until last year, including last year. This year, of course, we stole her and brought her on staff here. So she's still taking clients, but she's working on staff with our company. But she is going to let us pull back the curtains and dig into some of her numbers. And we've got some exciting revelations, some also revelations about Kate's money mindset that I think we're all going to find
I'm already blushing, I feel like. The heat's rising in my cheeks already.
She's freaking out. This is very fun. Not fun. I mean, it's, okay.
This is the kind of boss I have now.
I'm having a great time making you deeply uncomfortable.
I'm sweating.
And also, as you probably noticed, Kate has this amazing background. If you're watching the video, Kate has this amazing living room that she is definitely in. Although when she moves, her hand disappears. Yes. No. Yeah. Yeah. And that's because Kate is in mid-move and didn't want to show us the crazy background she has going on.
Yep. It's much easier to throw up a Zoom background that looks real nice and professional than the space I'm currently in, which is my brother's old bedroom. So
there you go. Your fake living room is a lovely living room.
Thank you. Yeah. Thanks to West Elm, who's not sponsoring this in any way. But I would love this living room.
Yeah, West Elm, call us. Kate needs furniture.
Yeah, I do.
Okay, so let's stop dilly-dallying, Kate. Stop trying to distract me. Let's dig into some of your numbers.
Let's start at the beginning. So what we figured we'd do, or, as I looked back on my timeline, 2015 was a transition period for me of moving out of an agency world into full-time freelance. So those numbers are a little funky. And so I decided to go with 2016 to share my first full-time, and I say full-time freelance year, I really worked about 1/3 of the time, just because, as everyone knows who has heard me hint at this, I did not have a pitching strategy. Red flag number one to meeting any sort of income goal. So bear that in mind. And then as we dig into 2016, we will then dig in, flash forward to 2020, which you would think, 2020 pandemic. No, it was my best year as a freelancer to date. Granted, hit a little bit of burnout with how much work I chose to take on, but we'll get to that. So I guess let's start with 2016. So we're going to compare 2016 versus 2020. Note in mind that in 2017 and 2018 and 2019, frankly, I think all three, I want to say 2017, I was very close to six figures, and then 2018, 2019 hit it. So those were all kind of consistent early six-figure years. But
so 2016 was your first only freelancing year. Maybe that's a better way to put it. And you were working, 15, 18 hours a week, roughly?
Yeah, if that. I would say 15 to 18. There were definitely, by the end of the year, I had started ramping up more, but simply because I had more time. I had talked to more people in my network. I had maybe started sending some pitches by the very, very, very tail end of the year. But for the most part, yes, I was not working. I wanted to work full-time. That was my goal. I had transitioned out of a full-time job. And so my goal was to work roughly 40 hours a week, not, give or take as a freelancer. Obviously, there's some weeks you might work more, some weeks you might work less.
So 2016, what was your number? Hit us with it.
It was $53,967.10. We're doing it down to the, I don't know. I don't know where the 10 cents came from. That's a really good question, actually.
How are you Anyway, so 50.
Clearly my accounting also wasn't as good. I went back to the spreadsheet from 2016 I was using, and it was not what we teach you in the CCA. What I use now is actually, frankly, I still use the same thing that we use in the CCA, which is I do it in a Google Sheet versus Excel doc. Back in 2016, I had just a Word doc with running totals from each. It was real disorganized. So have systems. So that 10 cents was probably an error on this
Call that a typo.
Um,
So 15 to 18 hours, roughly $53,000. That's pretty good. That's
pretty darn good. Yeah. And if
you
you round it, so yeah, 54,000, if that 967, if you round that up. So yeah, I felt pretty good about it. It was significantly less than my full-time agency job, obviously. But because of the hours, I started to feel like, okay, like it's pretty nice to have all of this free time. I could, we had just moved to Germany. That was the other big thing to know about this number. I was working overseas for the first time consistently, not just like a week or month. It was ongoing and taking client calls, at 9:00 at night, which was fine. It allowed me to go out during the day, meet people, have a social life, which was really nice. But if you see me looking over here for folks on the video, I have numbers, so I'm not just memorizing off the top of my head what I did. But that my average number of clients in a month, and I think this number is really interesting, especially when we break down the 2020 numbers. My average number of clients in a month was about 4. So I had 3 kind of what I would call regular, recurring clients, people that I worked with on a monthly basis, and then 1 rotating generally, or a one-off project. So I had a couple of other clients that I worked with regularly, but it wasn't every month. It might be 1 month here, and then 2 months later, that same client would pop back up. And then occasional like one-off project of like, hey, we need a new website, and that would be the end of my work with whomever that was.
Well, and there's actually something I want to clarify too before we go any further. When we say 15 to 18 hours, we're not talking just copy, just literally writing copy. We're talking all aspects of working with the client.
The whole thing.
Kickoff calls, reviews, editing. So not just copywriting.
Sending the invoice, all the admin work that goes along with it.
When we think about the hours we work as copywriters, we're not talking about literally sitting down and writing for 8 hours a day. Thank God. Can you imagine? So that your weekly hours are the totality of all the work that you do with clients.
Yeah. And make sure you're tracking that, because it's very easy to, I'm just going to do this one easy thing and then not count it. And we need to do that, because otherwise then your estimates for project work and for your pricing are going to be thrown off, and you'll end up putting in more hours than you maybe want to, and more time than you actually have in a week. So making sure to schedule out that time for those admin tasks, and to account for that when you're doing a scope of work for a client, to say, hey, this is going to cost this much, and this includes all of the things. So then thinking of the average project cost, this is another number I dug into, because we have a lot of folks, I think, who make the assumption that, I'm not going to work with them if it's like a $50 project. Why would I do that? That's so super low. That's not going to get me to hit my number. So my average project cost in 2016 was under $500. So my regular clients, I build about $1,500 a month with lots of little projects. So if you break down the actual little projects, yes, this $1,500 invoice, but lots of, one client, for example, emails, airport sign, a giveaway form, social copy, banner ad. And so all these little things that didn't necessarily take a lot of time or require much work, were all under $500. And so I have a note in my tracking system was a mess, as I mentioned, about the numbers and why that 10 cents is even there in the first place. And I think I don't know that I still do my hours to the quarter of an hour. I know some people who round up full hours, some people that round up to the half hour. I still do quarter of an hours, just because there's a lot of things that literally are like 10 minutes that I round up to the quarter of an hour. That's what I feel comfortable with. I don't feel good saying, okay, 10 minutes, I'm going to round up to the half an hour. Some people do. Not my cup of tea. So again, tracking system was a mess. So take these are the numbers I came up with, but it's a little wild. But so I thought that was interesting that everything was under $500. There weren't too many single projects that were over that amount. So I pulled, go
I
ahead.
was just going to say, yeah, clearly, just to really underline that point, $500 projects and the smaller projects can add up, they can add up to a $53,000 a year working 15 or 18 hours a week.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And you'll see further down the line in 2020, they can add up to a lot more than that too. The key is not necessarily finding those big one-off projects, but doing really good work. Truly, that has been my quote unquote secret, is doing consistently good work for my clients, being a strategic partner for my clients, answering their emails within 24 hours, doing all of the things that people look for when they hire a service provider like a copywriter. I don't put more work onto their plate. My goal is to take it off of their plate and keep it off of their plate. If I need a question from them, obviously I'll go to my client, ask it to make sure I can get my work done. But as much as possible, making this process so super easy for them that they do come back. And that's truly what has helped these numbers that you'll see happen. There's been no real other big secret. And do I think I'm the world's best copywriter? No, I think I'm pretty darn good and continue to get better because there's always more to learn and more to ways to grow. But it's that's not even necessarily, I feel like, what clients want all the time. Yes, they want great copy in the end, but they don't want to have to think about it. They don't want to have to handhold the project. They don't want to have to worry that you're not going to hit a deadline. That's a big one. They want to make sure that they're passing it off to you and it's in good hands and they can trust you to get it done. And they can trust you that if it's a little bit off, you will fix it and make it work for them. So that's the big secret to my numbers, at least.
Yeah, and they can trust that you are also looking at other opportunities for them because you are in their business. Yep. We won't get into this too deeply because I know we have another episode on it, but when you're in their business and you see opportunities and you see ways that their business could benefit, maybe it's a copywriting project that would certainly benefit you. You say, hey, I thought about this. If we did this, it would benefit the business in this way. And even if they don't want to do it immediately, they really appreciate that they have the kind of partner who's going to be looking out for opportunities like that, so they don't have to do it all themselves.
Yeah, exactly. That's such a good point. And so when I say I wasn't pitching new clients or outside of clients I had already worked with. And so, but what I was doing was exactly what Nicki just said, which is in itself a form of pitching, of saying, hey, we just did this. Can we do this too? I'm trying to think of a good example because I feel like I did it not too long ago on a freelance project where, yes. So I was writing it was a content piece for a client I used to work with. I'm going to go 9-10 years ago almost, and came back and said, hey, can you help us out with this? And I said, sure. And there was a point in the content piece where it was made me think of like a flow chart so for college students looking to pursue a certain degree, it felt like a very, if this, then that, and if this, then this. And so I wrote a big comment like, hey, I know this is a content piece and here's how we can spell this out for people. But what would be really cool is if you created a whether it's digitally done and or a PDF that they can download, if there's something they can interact with, even better. I don't know what their dev, capabilities are, but to be able to click and say, okay, if the answer is yes, then you go here. And if the answer is no, then you go here. And so I gave them that logic and was like, hey, this is another way you could package this and make it really interactive for students. And so I pitched them that idea. They loved it. Is it something I'm necessarily going to help them out with? No, but that's okay with me. That type of thing is what's going to keep clients coming back, because I'm not just focused on delivering the project and being done with it. I'm focused on how can I be a part of their business and give them recommendations for doing something more that will help them to grow their business. And yes, as a byproduct down the line, potentially bring more work my way. But that's good business as a service provider, is to always be.
Yeah, I think you hit the nail on the head, that ethos of acting as if you are within their business. Yes. You're not withholding ideas because you might not necessarily be able to act on them. You're saying, hey, I had this great idea, not going to benefit me in any way, but you do it because it's going to make a big difference for you. And that's what sets you apart. Absolutely.
And the more you can put that out in the world, I promise you, the more that it does come back. So moving on from 2016, I did break out my 2017 numbers. So it was 98,000, I guess.
Awesome.
I don't know why I did 17. I didn't do 2018 and 2019, but anyway, 98,000. So just shy of that.
Was that full time yet or not quite yet? Do you remember?
That's a good question. I don't remember, but I don't think it was quite full time, honestly. I think it was probably like 6-hour days, which some people might say that's full time and feel full time to them. To me, I was like, nope, this is still lots of room in my schedule. And I will say 2017, 2018, and 2019, I traveled a lot during that time period. Again, we were in Germany. And so there were definitely lots of vacation time in with that, at least 3 weeks. My goal has always been to take at least 2 weeks laptop off completely. But within that, I definitely had every month we took a 4 or 5 day weekend. And so sometimes I would bring my computer if I felt like, okay, I just want to make sure these emails are answered. And when I come back from my trip, I'm not having to dig out that, which I think is more painful sometimes than just answering a couple emails while on a trip. Mm-hmm. So within that 98,000 year of 2017, there was a lot of time off. And I would, 6. And of course, were there some days that I probably worked 10 hours? Yes, absolutely. I'm sure there were. And some days that I completely, took a Monday off or took, 3 hours for a lunch, because that's my favorite thing to do, is to go out to lunch for 3 hours. And often after that 3-hour lunch, I don't want to come back and work. So yeah, that was, obviously a really great year. Average project there was about $1,000 and the median was 450. And I called out the median because I think that's an important, there were more lower value. That average is skewed by all of the outlier projects, if that makes sense. And it's been a minute since I've been in math.
I know, really. So mean is average, right?
Yes.
So then what is the median?
But the median is if you put out all the numbers in a list. Mm-hmm. So if I had 100 projects, there'd be 100 numbers in a list. What is the middle one?
Does that make sense? Gotcha. Yes, I do.
I believe that's what it is. So 450 is that median, which, yeah. So I think that just shows, though, there are a lot of lower projects with some higher ticket projects that kind of skew that average to be closer to 1,000. So again, even with the 98,000 year compared to the 54,000 year, yeah, the median being 450 for 2017 and my average being under 500 for 2016, those numbers aren't wildly drastic. Yes, my average was higher per project in 2017, but again, that's because I had a few higher value projects that year that kind of skew that number a little bit. But my average number of clients each month was still 4. So I'm not dealing with, I didn't take on necessarily more clients. I think, and I'm trying to think, there were definitely a client that I let go from 2016 and gained a client that just needed more consistent work and a higher volume of work each month. So I'm sure people are like, well, you have 4 clients and 4 clients. How did one total almost double, from one year to the next? And that is because I did swap some clients out, but certain clients, again, because of the relationship we built, and as they had more work or as they could trust me more to do more work, it compiled. So there was more volume in a given month than there was in 2016.
It's a great point too, is that often the more that you work with a client, the more that not just your contact trusts you, but their boss trusts you. They're used to getting quality copy from you. They're much more comfortable with, just give it to Kate or give it to, because they know that they can trust you. They know that you know their business now. Yeah. So I think that's a great point, that the longer you work with a company, often more things will come your way.
Yes. And the more good work you do with them, the longer time they have that if someone asks, hey, do you have a copywriter you'd recommend? They'll recommend you. Because you would think that people have tons of copywriters to recommend to people, and that is not the case. I've been recommended for several projects from people where it's like, I'm apparently the only freelance copywriter they know, or at least the only one they know that they're like, oh no, stamp of approval. If I recommend her to someone, I know she's going to do good work and not make me look bad, and not, I don't want to recommend someone that I don't stand behind. So the longer you can be with people and develop that sort of relationship, the more it's going to serve you. And to note too, all of my clients in 2017 were repeat clients except for one that entire year.
Wow.
So, so skipping ahead to 2020, this is because again, 2018, 2019 were both kind of six figures, 120, 130, somewhere in that range, which felt like a comfortable, and I feel like that's a pretty comfortable place for a copywriter to get, at least in my experience. I don't know about yours, but
yeah, these are not throwaway numbers either. $120,000, $130,000 per year. That's
pretty damn
These are
good.
obviously excellent incomes. Yeah. But then
2020,
basically when she pulled out this number for me, I was like, we're doing an episode on this. People need to know whether you're comfortable with it or not. She's acclimated to it. She's acclimated to sharing this number.
I'm just going to pretend no one's watching. This is what I'm going to pretend. So I want to set this up because before we get to this number, there's a lot of context. There's that I've been doing this for 5 years freelance at this point, 5 years full-time, 5-6 years, whatever that is, the math.
And at that point, 10 plus years total.
10 plus years, exactly, as a copywriter. So there is that. Had I raised my rates that much? Because I know that's another question people might ask. Well, 2016 to 2020, you raised your rates super significantly. I really didn't. And wait till you hear one of my rates. I'll share you just one with one of my clients because they are different, based on the project, based on some projects end up I come out way on top because for whatever reason they didn't need revisions, but I'd factor that into my project quote. So if you actually do out the math, you're like, wow, this is a huge, huge hourly rate. You don't need to have a crazy high hourly rate to hit your number. Yeah. You need to track your time in the proper way because let's do the math on that. Like say you did charge $120 an hour and you work full-time.
And that, of course, includes, as we were saying, copywriting and writing for your copywriting and client meetings and edits and revisions and concepting time and all of that stuff.
Yeah. So $120 an hour full time is $249,600. Wow. So almost $250,000. Yeah. That's a lot for a copywriter. Is that can people hit that number? Maybe, but I think more people I know who would charge $120 an hour are maybe making half that, I would say, and not working as much. And if that's your prerogative to charge more and work less, okay. That's not my prerogative. I want to work a full-time job and feel like I am delivering value to my clients. And I don't know that could I deliver 120 value to my clients? Sure. So all that's to say is, if your dream is to make more money and less work, potentially though, that could lead you to less of both in the long run, because of that expectation with $100 an hour, in the sense that if you're charging 120 an hour to your client, they're going to expect, and if they know that that's your hourly rate versus packaged in a project rate and that they're comfortable with, if they know that's your hourly rate, the expectation's here. And so if you don't meet that expectation, you're not going to get them to work with you again. They'll find someone else. And I don't want to say, well, they're going with someone cheaper. That's not my ideal client. Even if they're going with someone for $80 an hour, like that's a significant difference. So
exactly. I think that over $100 an hour, again, if they know that's your hourly rate, the vast majority of your clients won't know what rate you use to factor into your project price, because you just never share that with them. But if your hourly rate is over 100, there is that clients expect to be wowed. And which is, again, is part of the reasons why it doesn't generally make sense to charge by the hour versus charging by the project. And there are, a lot of different factors that go into, well, I started at this rate. I started, if you're brand new to copywriting, don't start at $100 an hour. Don't start at 80. Don't start even 60, frankly, I think is a little bit high if you're new to it.
Brand new.
But as you go, as you get more experience, as you hone your skills, as you work with more types of clients, as you get a portfolio that shows more of the things that you can do, then you can gradually raise your rates. But we don't, not to get too far off the topic on this either, but you don't want to be bumping up your rates by $20 an hour as you go. It should be like $5. maybe once a
Maybe
year.
10.
Yeah, maybe 10,
Yeah.
somewhere in there.
10's still a big jump if you do it percentage wise, and how the bulk of society works in terms of pay raises. So
exactly.
So thinking of my numbers from 2016 to 2020, there were a couple of years where I didn't bump up rates at all. And then there was a year where I bumped up with one client by 10 because I hadn't the year before. I was like, oh shoot, I missed the train on that. And so they were fine with it and they went with it. And then a lot of clients that I've done 5 from when I first started to now. And kind of have leveled off to the point where most of my projects are project based.
Well, and if you say, all right, you want a sales page and it's going to take me 10 hours to do it at this hourly rate, they're thinking, really? You're sitting down and writing for 10 hours straight? When we know that's not at all the case, or 20 hours maybe if it's a long sales page, and that's not at all the case. There's the input call at the beginning, there's a lot of concepting, there's a lot of planning and outlining, and then there's writing, and then there's revising, and then there's meeting, all that stuff. But thank God it's not just straight writing. But a client isn't going to understand that. So it is important to project prices. Just let us put project prices keep our clients from going, wait, how much am I paying them?
Yep, exactly. And if they haven't worked with you, they aren't sure if all of those other things we talked about are going to come with that, in the sense of you taking the work off their plate, of being easy to work with, of being, a great business person. So that's scary for them when you're a brand new person, service provider to their company. It's hard to know what other value you're packing into that rate. And so once they work with you and see that value, then it's like, oh yeah, this is a deal, because they may have worked with other copywriters or other service providers who don't provide good customer service, if you will.
Yeah, that's such a great point. Because it's not just about the meetings and the writing and it's about how quickly you answer their emails, how thoroughly you answer their emails, how if you listen to, you follow instructions well, you come back with ideas, all of that stuff that goes around the actual project. Do you check in a month or two later just to see if they need any help with anything? That it sounds so silly, because I think copywriters are like, no, I don't want to do that because it's like I'm begging for work. No, to a client, it is so helpful to have a service provider check in and be like, hey, I just want to check in, see if you have anything you need help with. If not, no big deal. But if you do, it's like, here you are. Awesome. It's one less thing I have to do. I didn't have to get in touch with Kate today.
Exactly. Yeah. I shared this in the CCA, the students only group, recently-ish, that a client came back to me and said, thank you so much for following directions. And what that line said to me was that they'd worked with people before that did not follow directions. And that's such a simple thing, but that thorn in their side, you don't want to be a thorn in their side in any way. And so even if they're, that other copywriter wrote the best copy ever and didn't follow directions though, then that's going to be more frustrating.
Yeah. Well, it wasn't directions for copy, right? Wasn't it like directions for uploading your...
Exactly. It was highlighting keywords that they wanted to show in the doc, and the format of the document, like basic, nothing related to copy. But if people didn't follow it, that's time that then they have to go through and highlight and reformat the document like how they need it. And that's part of the project.
Yes.
That's part of our job.
Yeah. As a client, how annoying would that be to know that I'm paying this copywriter and they're not even following the directions I gave them? So once they find it sounds like such a simple little thing, but clearly a bunch of people had done it wrong. So it must have been so nice to be like, thank God she finally followed not she finally, but we finally found someone who follows the directions. Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, ready? Are you ready to do this, Kate?
No, I have some more caveats, if you don't mind. I know I'm just stalling, but I want important caveats because I don't want people to hear the number and be like, cool, leave. Important caveats, folks. A reminder, I did not have a logo. These are all things I did not have when I hit this number. Did not have a logo. I did not have an email other than my Gmail. I did not have a Facebook page, or I might have, but I love you, Mom. And my mom's the one that interacts with it and points out my typos. Thank God. She's a free copy editor and it's amazing. But again, no social media interaction with clients. I keep it very separate from my work. That's just a choice I made, besides LinkedIn. But even then, not super active on LinkedIn. So no personal brand. I didn't spend any time with that. Professional photos, I only got done at the end of 2019 because I was like, it's time. I need this. So all these things I didn't have. the other caveat, it was 2020. So when the pandemic did hit, I was having great January, great February. Things were on track, felt good, didn't feel out of the ordinary. Come March, as we started to get wind of this, I was like, I'm not going to say no to anything. And so that was March, even April. I was like, not going to say no to anything because we didn't know where things were going.
Well, I think that's what a lot of students found too, is that, because there are a lot of students that
Yes.
started their businesses last year. And
Yes,
I think
yes.
everyone was really, as much as I was like, look,
Pleasantly
guys,
surprised.
I haven't been through a pandemic, but I've been through a recession. I can tell you what
Yep.
happens. I think maybe some people believe me, some people didn't. I'm not here to say I told
Until you
so.
experience it for
However,
yourself.
I did tell you so. But yeah, the business was terrible, and a lot of people suffered last year. I'm not at all trying to say that didn't happen, and I certainly feel for those people. In our specific industry, copywriters did very well.
Yeah. And I think until you experience it, it's how can you trust that's going to be the case? But anyway, so the pro was that I could ramp up and down as I needed throughout the year, which was nice. And I did ramp down significantly come like July, August. I was like, ooh, I did a lot of work in the front half of the year. I need to ramp down, if you will. And then obviously the con side of that was that I did ramp up too much for me, and you get into a territory where that's not only bad for me, that is bad for my clients. If I'm doing too much work that I can't give each client the best service, writing, et cetera, that they deserve, then that's not how you win repeat business, and that's not how you do great work. So there is that danger of ramping up too much and finding that place where, okay, I need to, for my own sanity and for my clients, and to make sure that my business is sustainable in the long run, because I am able to serve them and they want me to serve them still. So yes, we can dig into the guilt of this number and money mindset thing. But so the number, and I think it's wrong in my sheet, I think it was 197,000 was the number for 2020.
A full-time freelance copywriter.
Insane. That was very much full-time.
$197,000 in 2020.
In 2020.
That's amazing.
And that was straight copywriting work. I want to make that clear, because we were chatting before we started recording that, there's a lot of copywriters that might say, you can make 500,000 and then you can scale further. I find that a little bit BS. I think at a certain point, if you are making that much as a copywriter, you have either started hiring folks under you to contract work out, or
which is
you're
fine.
selling.
That's great.
Yeah,
that's different from
totally
directly writing copy.
Yeah, it's different than saying I'm a copywriter and I make this much. I think that's a little disingenuous, because there's more to that than just writing copy for clients and working one-on-one as a service provider.
Yeah, it's a different kind of business. You're running an agency versus just writing copy. Yeah.
And then similarly, if you decide to sell a product, whether it's, I know there are a lot of templates out there, which, our feelings on templates, but if that's what someone's doing, templates or courses or, teaching people how to write copy, for example, that is a different piece of the pie than just writing copy for clients. So like Nicki, for example, has freelance copywriting clients and then has this business. And so the numbers are a little bit different for you, right? Because it's not just straight copywriting.
Well, yeah, that's part of the reason why we're looking at my numbers are so skewed now as a copywriter, because so much of my time is teaching and is running this business. So I can't even really tell you the number. My income as a freelance copy, I'm still writing copy because I love it. But yeah, the last time I was truly full-time freelance was several years ago. Full-time freelance and not also working on this business. Yeah.
Yeah. So that's why we're looking at this guy, because 2020 was straight copywriting. So 197,000 straight copywriting.
Yeah. That's amazing, Kate. Congratulations. That's really, really fantastic.
Thank you. So to dig into that a little bit, like we did with the other ones, there's one client I dug into. And so this is the one where I was saying, it's $50 an hour, guys. $50 an hour. And I've been doing this for how long? And people are like, why? Why would you still work with them? Like, what? That's so low. Yes, it is much lower than literally every other client I work with, and literally every other project rate or hourly rate. I think they're my only real hourly left. But I love this work. I love working with this client. I've worked with this client for years. It's easy. It is fun. It brings me it's actually content writing, which is probably why it's so low for most of it. I didn't think about that. Important caveat, but super fun. I get to interview people and tell interesting stories, and it just brings me so much joy. And so I would highly recommend, even if a client is lower than your hourly rate, don't automatically dismiss it if it is something you are passionate about and it will bring you joy. And total for them for 2020, it was still $10,000.
Oh, wow.
Is what that $50 an hour total. So seeing 50 on the surface translate to $10,000, think about it. So I'll say. I'm not saying you have to, and I wouldn't say every client should be below what your rate is. That's not what I'm saying by any means. Mm-hmm. But again, if you're not hitting your financial goal, it doesn't necessarily mean to jack up your rates, because $50 an hour does get you to six figures if you do the math.
Yeah,
so
40 hours a week, $50 an hour. Yeah. Again, not literally writing copy every hour. You have to include the other the other client time in your project time.
Exactly. And 50, I feel like clients are so comfortable with a rate like that it's almost easy to impress them, versus at $100 an hour, it's going to take a lot more to impress them. Mm-hmm. So there's a little bit of stress-free feeling with that client, mm-hmm. because again, I'm doing my best work. I'm not undercutting them. I'm not giving them $50 worth of work instead of 100 or 150. Doing the same work, but it's a good experience. So that the number of clients with this, I think it was the same. Again, I don't think each month to month was not more than 4, maybe 5 clients. Throughout the year, yes, I probably had like 12 or so clients, maybe a little more. But again, the bulk of those for each month, those were repeat clients, repeat work, mm-hmm. repitching those clients, being a partner to all of them, and adding value and collaborating and making myself part of their team, and not just delivering work, which I think a lot of freelancers, they just want to execute and be done. Here it is, execute, done, execute, done. And you can get away with that, yes, and that is in some clients that might be all is needed and is what they want from you. But for the bulk of your clients, you're going to get a lot further if you are acting more as a contributing member of their team than just someone who gets tossed work and tosses it back.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. And I won't tell the story here again, because I know I've told it on previous podcasts, but that's exactly what I did with one client. And when mm-hmm. I went back, and she got pitched by another copywriter, and she assumed because I had never pitched her those projects, I couldn't do it. So she went and worked with that copywriter, and she eventually came back and started working again, and she told me what had happened. But by a conservative estimate, because she was also a business coach and was referring me to her students, by a conservative estimate, I lost out on at least probably around $100,000 worth of work. Like maybe 50 is super conservative, but I would guess at least $100,000 worth of work from this one client alone, because I was not the partner that I should have been. I absolutely deserved to have her quote unquote stolen away from me. Like, kudos to that copywriter who came in and pitched her. Good for her.
Yeah.
Now, Kate, there's something I want to dig into here.
Yes.
And I know you know where I'm going, because when Kate first said, I was looking at my numbers, do you want to know what I made for 2020? I think you said something like, I kind of don't want to tell you, or I was like, I'm kind of scared.
Because I thought, so the reason this came up, I was like, for CCA students, for anyone looking to get into copywriting, I think numbers are such a big piece of this, of what is actually realistic. What's the no BS? And again, there's so many variables. My experience is going to be very different than your experience. Leave it there. But I was like, I think that would really make a great podcast to share with people, to go behind the scenes of, and I said my numbers, knowing that Nicki has been working on this business for a while, and it makes the straight freelance and copywriter numbers a little bit harder to dig into. So I had this idea that I thought people would find valuable, but I was like, oh, that means it's on me to then pull back that curtain. And I think sharing income and sharing just what you're making each year, what do you charge? I think it's hard to talk about money when that's not something I think we grow up discussing necessarily, depending on your family. And most people don't just share that. It feels very secretive. It feels very personal. And I think when you hit a number that's that high, for me, I felt guilty, like knowing 2020, knowing what people went through, knowing friends in other industries that were hit hard, that lost jobs, that, I don't know, that I'm making assumptions about how they're all doing. They could be doing just fine, but it's not something we talk about. And so I think there was, I was told you, I was like, I'm a little hesitant. I think this is a really good idea and I want to share this, but I also don't want to share it.
Well, I think even people who are listening or watching can, you feel you're totally comfortable being like, yep, that year I made 53, that year I made 98, that year was 120, that year was 130. And then when you get to 2020, you're like, oh, it's a totally different feeling for you. And I agree. We don't talk a lot about what we make. I do want to kind of dig into that. I wonder, would you have felt guilt? Because guilt is your word. Would you have felt guilt if you'd made that money in a different year?
It's a good question. I don't know if I would have felt as much, but yes, I still think it's because it's this number that to me and growing up and seeing families and friends and even people now and knowing kind of what certain people make. My husband's in the military, all the military jobs are public information. So we know, our circle, what people are making, and what like middle class, if you will, numbers feel like versus like being in an echelon that makes me feel like I am outside of my tribe and my people, that I'm now evil or
Is it so? The first thing I want to say is something someone said many years ago, and I forget who it was, but it was very insightful. They said, you, especially in the sense of 2020, yes, we have to pitch in, we have to help each other, and we have to feel for each other and be there for each other. But making less money is not going to mean that someone else makes more money. You being poor is not going to raise someone out of poverty. Right. So it's not like if you had made less money that, if you had made less money that it
wouldn't have impacted anyone.
Exactly.
It would have made a difference for anyone.
Exactly. And by providing the value you helped these businesses survive the pandemic. Right.
When I break it down logically, not only did I help the businesses that I worked directly with, because we felt comfortable and, business was chugging along, literally every Wednesday during the pandemic, we'd hit another local restaurant and order a significant amount of takeout food. So I feel like not only was I able to help the business I worked with, I was then able to pay that forward the money I was making to my community and to the local economy, and hopefully helping all of these small businesses, because that's what we specifically chose to shop, eat, buy things from as small of businesses as we could have. Even, local businesses that started carrying paper towels, like, cool, let's go get that from them versus the big box store that I know that will survive, which isn't to say they don't need income as well or employing people as well. But these small businesses, the reality was they needed more support to survive.
Absolutely.
Survive this time.
Absolutely.
So logically, yes, I feel like I help this. It's all a good thing. It's interesting because it's just this like, ooh, this number's just too big. It's too big.
But I think
why do I deserve that?
Exactly. They call it an upper limit problem is one of the things that they call is you've hit your upper limit and now you're like, I can't even, I'm not even comfortable with that level. But I think too that, there's this element of sometimes people thinking, and not saying that this is what you're thinking, but I want to address it. The idea of there being a net zero or a zero sum game, I guess is what I'm looking for. A zero sum game of like, well, if she's doing all this copywriting work, then there isn't copywriting work for other people. And that's not at all true. There was a lot more copywriting work because so many companies were scrambling and so many companies needed help. And one of the things that's going to help carry a company through is messaging. I mean, how many businesses did we come across that were like, oh, I didn't know that you were doing that. If I'd known that you were doing that, I would have ordered this, or I would have done, but I didn't know because no one told me, because you didn't send an email, you didn't get that messaging across to me. There was so much work that even students who started their businesses last year made more money than they had ever had in their previous careers. And again, money does not equate to goodness or being a good person by any means, but it does equate to providing a valuable service.
Well, it's funny you say that. I think there's so much work that come July, August, when I started down saying I let go of one client, because I didn't feel like I could provide them as much value as I had the past 5 or so years. I'd worked with them for years and it was just time. But I thought of starting my own agency and saying, well, if I have all this work and I have these clients coming in and I can do the business side of it and, bring in work for other writers, but the thought of that just didn't fit with what I wanted to do. The thought of that did not bring me joy in any way, to feel like I would then have to review copy consistently and not, get the right people on my team. I wanted to go a different direction. I wanted to explore other things, but there was that amount of work that I strongly considered it, because I ended up just passing work on to other writers I know, because and I'm fine with that. I think some people would be like, why would you just give away work for free? But again, the more you do that, the more that comes back. I can't tell you how many fellow copywriters have then passed along work to me that they couldn't take on. So it's not an either or, got to take it all and build an agency, or else, that work, I won't get it. You can absolutely get by, I should say. That's not getting by. Like, depending it's what your goal is. Because if your income goal is a certain, 500,000, the work that goes with that to get there, if that's what you want to do and that process would make you happy, not just the number, because there's a lot to unpack behind that number, then go for it. But for me, that wasn't getting higher financial goal individually for myself or a business wasn't the route I wanted to go.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's fascinating.
But the work was there.
Yeah, and it still is. That's, the pandemic hopefully is largely over. Knock on whatever this desk is made out of. But just because business ramped up in 2020 during the pandemic because business was scrambling doesn't mean that it's going to ramp down so much that there's always work for skilled copywriters, always work, and always fewer skilled copywriters. There are a lot of people out there like, yeah, I'm a copywriter. Oh, what do you write? I write blog posts. Then you're not a copywriter. There are always there's so much more work for skilled copywriters and fewer truly skilled copywriters than I think people realize. Certainly our students are surprised to discover how much work there is, and also surprised to discover the differences in quality between people who call themselves copywriters and people who actually are copywriters.
And then even within that, once you are a skilled copywriter, having all of the other components that we've mentioned about being a good service provider, because that I feel like is even more rare in some ways, just offering good services. And I will say too, thinking about finances again, this isn't to say you have to disclose your numbers with anyone or dig into it. Because I think the other side of, it gets hard talking about numbers because then there's almost an expectation that you feel like people might have for you. Like I know friends that I want to go visit and it's like, well, why can't you're making that much? Why can't you spend it on this? Or why, people can start to question your financial decisions versus, we're about to move to New York City. We're not about to have a ton of income for a place like that. And so we're being very, thrifty, I guess, with our decisions, even though that number to a lot of people would seem like, well, you can do
anything,
whatever you want. Yes. Yeah, which isn't the case. So what I will say though is if there is someone, a fellow copywriter that you feel like is at your same level. So I have a former colleague that I touch base with then every once in a while to be like, ooh, I'm thinking of charging this. breaking out all the projects so they understand what it is, because no one can give you a price if they do not understand the full scope of the project. I know people love to say, well, I have a blog post. What would you charge for it? I have a banner ad. What would you charge for it? There's no one size fits all, but having someone that you can hash out and talk things through, it can be very helpful, just to get a sense of, am I crazy? Am I not? And so that's helped me, I know, to have someone to be like, hey, here's what I'm thinking of bumping up my hourly rate to. And
but also, by and large, isn't the answer almost always like, yeah, go for it?
Yeah, basically. Exactly. Yeah. It's, especially if you've thought it out and you have, boop, 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 here's all my reasoning. I mean, at that point, you're just looking for validation, which is, we all need it at some point for certain things. But if they're truly, a good sounding board, they'll be honest with you. And it's like, well, you threw out a number. What's behind that? What
is that based
show
on?
Show me the work. And if you haven't done the work, then go back and do it to figure out.
Yeah. At no point should you be ever, I need to write a website, I'm going to charge $600. A website could be 3 pages. A website could be 50 pages. Those 3 pages could be super in-depth and super complicated. The 50 pages could be super easy and you could write practically asleep. Every project is so different. You can never, ever, ever, even though we see it all the time, people asking, you can never know, unless you're within the project and you've talked to your client and you figured it all out and you know how long things take you. You cannot get a price. No one else can give you a price for what you do.
Yeah. And if you looked at my tracking sheet for 2020, there's many, many websites and none of them are the same cost. And many, many of those websites were 3-5 page websites. None of them were the same cost. It's just, that's reality of it.
Exactly. Yeah. It's just every project is different. Every client is different. All of it.
Yep.
Yeah.
And if you pull it out of the air, could you come out on top? Maybe. But you could also end up shortchanging yourself significantly.
Absolutely. And that's the worst feeling when you're working on a project and you're like, why did I quote this for so little? Yeah. When you didn't build in time for revisions and the client wants a revision and it's an in-depth revision. And yeah, absolutely. Yeah. Well, Kate, this was very informative. I know it was very scary for you. Yeah. We're all working through our money issues and our upper limit issues. And I think note to selves, we need to find actually, I think I have one, a resource for money issues and money limitations. We'll bring one on to the podcast, talk us both through, because we all have our money things, right? But thank you for being brave and sharing your numbers for so many years as well, not just your big year, but for all those years. I know that it's super useful to our listeners and our viewers, and quite frankly, super inspirational. 197 is amazing. When I have been a full-time freelancer, absolutely or full-time copywriter, full-time freelancer, I can hit 6 figures, no problem, but I certainly have never hit 197. And as guilty and weird as that makes you feel, and frankly, I'm going to speak on behalf of everybody listening. I think that's so amazing, and I'm so impressed. And it just is a testament to the great work and great copywriter that you are. So you're awesome.
I learned from the best, so thank you.
You learned from somebody else now. No, but it's really fantastic. And once you get over that guilt, I hope that you will also be proud of yourself, because it's fantastic. And again, thank you so much for sharing.
Yeah, absolutely.
So everybody, this was a rough one for Kate, but we hope it was a good one for you and helpful. And again, inspiring, and kind of showed you some of the real life numbers and also some of the possibilities. So we hope you enjoyed it. And of course, we'll catch you in the next episode. Bye, everybody.
Thanks for watching. Make sure you don't miss any tips, tools, or tactics for copywriters by clicking subscribe right now. And of course, you can always find us over at filthyrichriter.com. We'll see you next time.